Welcome back to our next video. In this one, we will be chatting all things supplements. And we're going to talk a lot about how supplementation is different from person to person, how you really need to work with your medical practitioner to see what's right for you, and also share some resources that can help you figure out and work with your team on what your supplementation needs may be. And also talk a lot about bee products and how you can incorporate those.
A bit of a precursor to this is kind of talking about some of the testing too. And again, we aren't going to go into any specifics about testing, like specific tests other than ones that we feel comfortable sharing, just because this is, again, really the territory of a board certified physician. But generally, tests that we found important for our own journeys were ones related to, of course, Lyme and co-infections, ones related to mold, following kind of Neil Nathan's guide on that in his book, and the shoemaker ones that are available on his website. Some of these tests are related to the ones on, related to mold, are also related to biotoxin illness, and can also identify a Bartonella infection, as you'll learn if you read the book Toxic. Some of the other testing that we found important were ones related to hormones, inflammation, like autoimmune diseases, vitamins, which can help, again, kind of trace any sort of malabsorption issues. And moving on from that, proper mold testing for your house, which we talked about and you'll hear about, so not only for your house and your body, real-time, Great Plain, like the EnviroBiomics tests. And kind of a big focal point right now, as we're transitioning into kind of talking about supplements, is also some genetic testing. And so just for a really broad understanding of why genetic testing can be important, is that it allows you to see places or locations in your DNA where it was just copied improperly, which kind of leads to something called single nucleotide polymorphisms. And those are places where, again, you might have errors in where your DNA was replicated such that you're predisposed to developing certain conditions or certain traits or appearances or anything like that. And so kind of how you do genetic testing is you can do something like 23andMe, and 23andMe provides you with raw DNA code if you would like it. It's a little bit hard to access, and there's Google sort of walkthroughs on how to do it, but you can basically get your raw data and pump them into these third-party tools that some of them are free, some of them require like a small fee, and these kind of give you an idea of where your single nucleotide polymorphisms exist, such that you and your doctor can work together and see what supplementation or what protocols might be necessary to actually ameliorate or kind of serve as a preventative for some of those being expressed, especially as you're dealing with chronic illness.
A big thing with this is that not all of these things are on the table for you right now, will happen,
will be expressed.
are things you are currently experiencing or ever will. It's just to show you what all of the options are, right? And then you have this guide that you can then check back with and see what that means for your supplementation.
So for me, one perfect example is that I need kind of a combination between unmethylated, so hydroxy, and methylated B12. And that's just because the way kind of my body needs B12 is a combination, but for instance, someone else's could just be, they need the methylated version. So a lot of people are like, oh, if I have the MTHFR mutation, then it means that I absolutely need methylated B12, but actually that's not exactly true, because there's another one called COMT that can be really problematic. And so it's really important, again, that you work with a professional to understand your genetics and how they might play into what supplements might be useful for you. Some of the tools that we've used include Genetic Genie, which I found when I was working with my naturopathic physician back in 2018. Another one that's really great is Prometheus, although it's really, really technical, so don't do that unless you're trying to have nightmares or unless you are actually a geneticist. And then the third one is NutriHacker, which is one that requires payment. The other two are free or might require something really small. So those are some really great options, and of course we'll link them so that you can look them up and use them. But So now maybe we can, transition into kind of what supplements we take. And again, we don't want to be too prescriptive because again, this is tailored to our bio-individual needs.
Yeah, and also a lot of our supplementation has changed over, the course of our bee venom journey, and I'm sure will continue to change. So we, aren't gonna like write out or tell you guys exactly what we take. It is just so different, but there is a lot of overlap. Vitamin D is a really common one with Lyme.
Yeah, folks who often struggle with chronic illness really struggle with vitamins too, and vitamin D is a big one. Like I'm on a really, really high dose right now because I can't seem to get my levels up. And you just want to make sure that there isn't some underlying condition that could be causing like that malabsorption.
Yep. And if IVs might be the route for you, I've had to do iron IVs in addition to iron supplementation.
Some people take injections for vitamin D and vitamin B12. And again, you only want to do this with a doctor's supervision and authorization. You don't want to, despite the fact that some of this stuff you might just pee out, you don't want to do anything like without your doctor's supervision because, it could have ramifications down the line that you might not be aware of.
Yeah. And other ones, we talked about in the histamine section about DAO. I take magnesium at night. It just really helps with like my aches and helps me sleep. But again, it really is different for everybody. Vitamin C, we do both take because vitamin C is really important to helping with your adrenals while going through bee venom therapy.
Yeah, just keep in mind that, bee venom is excreted through your kidneys, and so if you're not supplementing that with enough vitamin C, it could put stress on your kidneys and be really problematic, and you don't want that either.
Yeah.
Like the problem is that sometimes with chronic illness, it's like things that might not be problematic in healthy people become problems for us because we are like sick, and so vitamin D, things like that, like vitamin C even, we're stinging, so it's necessary, but it just becomes a need for our supplementation often. And we take things like glutathione, which support your liver. Sometimes you can take like a supplement called NAC, which is a precursor to glutathione if you have a little bit more of a sulfur sensitivity. Again, things that like might be what you're taking already, but again, it's like necessary to just walk through this stuff with a doctor because if they put you on any medications, for instance, like for mold, you want to make sure that there's no interaction with your supplements. Oftentimes it's like we don't report what supplements we're taking to our physicians because we don't think that they're like a big deal. Like for instance, people take like ginkgo biloba or things like that can actually increase your liver enzymes. But if you don't like report that and you are predisposed to like hepatitis B, for instance, then it could be like a really big problem.
Yeah.
And so just make sure that you're reporting everything that you're taking so that your physician can figure out if they have any interactions and then like kind of what else to do from there.
Yeah, and just to get like clear that your dosages are correct, right? Like you want to be working with your physician because sometimes we'll take really high dosages of things, and that's not something that like we would ever advise or that your physicians would ever advise for you to do on your own. And it's for like a very set amount of time, and you just really want to work with them because they'll be able to, at the end of the day, right, they're here to help you feel your best and to help you heal. And so just having their guidance on how you can up your levels, work through any malabsorption issues, just get that supplementation really dialed in and then adapted and adjusted as needed is just really great. But those are just some examples.
Yeah, one thing that like we both really love and take is magnesium because it helps us like get to bed and it helps with some of our joint aches, and we also are really big proponents of CBD and just products of like the hemp plant just because it's like very therapeutic for us and our pains. Like for instance, just like a few hours ago Marissa gave me some sort of topical CBD cream for some neck stiffness I had, and that was really helpful. And so those maybe are not supplements that you ingest, but those are all other things that can be useful. And on the topic just really quickly of cannabis, some people take cannabis as like a kind of like to help them with their pain, right, if they're experiencing a herx, but just be aware that sometimes your genetics can actually inform you as to whether you can actually metabolize cannabis like in the right way. And so that's something else to pay attention to when you do some of this genetic work with your doctor, because that can help you figure out again, like, will cannabis make me feel worse or better? And in some ways, like, it can actually contribute to your histamine load.
Yeah, and again, it's we advocate so much for working with your medical team, one, because they are trained, but also because healing, and especially with Lyme and all of just the options out there, can be really expensive.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to be taking these things that you don't actually need,
right,
and that aren't going to make you feel good.
We are not discounting that some folks with Lyme really do need a lot of supplements, but again, it's that is with medical supervision.
Yes.
You shouldn't be going to Costco and getting random supplements that
clearing out the supplement aisle.
Yeah, because it's some of them have fillers, some of them just have gluten, which if you have celiac or a sensitivity, it's really toxic. And you just, again, want to make sure you're getting high quality products. And it's kind of that fine line between knowing if something that your doctor is recommending, again, is because you're getting a kickback or because it's actually potent. So those are all things that we've covered in when you're looking for your team and things to look out for. But yeah, finding high quality supplements is usually really, really, useful and necessary. And some things to look out for, are just third-party testing, making sure that there's no metals, no fillers, or additives.
No gluten. I mean, all the things that you wouldn't want in your food, right? Why do your supplements need to be any different?
Yeah.
So that's what's great about working with a team of people you trust too, because they'll have access to those really high-quality brands.
Yeah, and kind of transitioning into other products of the hive that we use.
Jeff.
Yeah, so just to kind of move on with other products of the hive that we find useful, there are a bunch of them. I'm sure you've heard of bee pollen, propolis, royal jelly, just plain old honeycomb, and we do recommend them, but again, with really a lot of caution, and just from, again, the scientific perspective, it's because these products do have some amino acids, again, which are the building blocks of life, notably histidine, which when ingested can become histamine inside your body, which again can add to, some of that pseudo-allergic, mast cell activation sort of stuff that you don't really want going on.
Which is why a lot of times, you see these trendy places that have a bunch of bee pollen in their smoothie bowls, things like that, and you can think that you're having this really healthy smoothie, but bee pollen, is a big thing that if you take too much, you will get that scratchy throat feeling, and a lot of people feel like they are allergic to that or therefore allergic to bees or all these things. Whereas, if you just start with 1 to 2 little granules, you can ease into that and be able to take advantage of all of the really great benefits of bee pollen.
Yeah, and I mean, those are things to definitely add in down the line because, for instance, propolis is super antibacterial. So sometimes if you're getting a sore throat, spraying some propolis on your throat can actually be really helpful, or taking some really potent honey can be really great. But again, this sort of stuff really does have to be in moderation because as much of an antibacterial, even for instance, melatonin is, it can, as we know now, it punctures those cells, releasing histamine, causing inflammation that is for the sake of this treatment, but needs to be again done in moderation along with other products of the hive.
And just thinking about like you said, right, everything in moderation. If you are adding in bees and bee venom to your life, it's not the best time to also add in every other bee product. So just easing into that, really making sure you're not increasing your histamine load to that scratchy throat, tight throat.
No one
place.
wants that.
Yeah, it's just not fun and not necessary. So yeah, just be mindful when easing into other bee products. They are all really amazing, and there's a lot of really great science about them as well, but just to be mindful about, how you add them in the smartest way.
Yeah. So that's kind of it for this little supplement section. And I mean, we again tried to intentionally be just a little bit vague about what exactly we take because we're not physicians and we're not trying to be. And again, we advise you to work with your doctor, but these are just kind of some of the things that have worked for us. And, we're both individuals who have our own bio needs, and we just have kind of found some things that have worked for us and some things that just haven't. So it's really something that you got to kind of move through and continue to iterate.
But hopefully this has just kind of shed some light on supplementation and the resources where you can figure out what you do need. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in our next video.